Greetings, Culturians, and welcome back to the channel. Today, boy, do we have some stuff to talk about. It was not the weekend they were hoping for, at least not in the box office anyway. There was a wonderful holiday weekend that those of us here in the United States truly got to enjoy. In a big way, something that, well, we should be proud of, being a country for 250 years that had to fight to actually win its freedom. And we're still having to fight. Diligence is required for that. But let's set all that aside and talk a little bit about the box office. Now, Minions and Monsters didn't do what we were expecting it to do, which is kind of a bummer. But the rest of the box office didn't really perform very well either. Was it the World Cup? Was it possibly the holiday itself? Or was it just that people have already spent their entertainment dollars for the month and are waiting until we get to Spider-Man Brand New Day? All good questions. Let's see if we can answer them. So here we go. Now, before we get started, just a real quick reminder, trying to get to 50K, your kind help would be appreciated. So double check you're subscribed. If not, click the subscribe button, hit the bell icon, turn on all notifications, and hit thumbs up. If you do those three things, we're off to the races. And then when we get to the end, just leave me some comments on your thoughts about what happened this last weekend. But what certainly did happen is that Minions and Monsters scared up about $16 million total for Friday. Except that's a little misleading because technically that Friday was an actual Friday that had earned that money. It had already earned $10 million on Thursday and $14 million on Wednesday. Of course, we move over to this from Anthony D'Alessandro on the Sunday morning update. This is Monday as you're watching this, and why Minions and Monsters slipped on a banana peel in the U.S. with a franchise low 5-day opening of $61 million. Now, I don't think those numbers are exactly right. They're close, but it did kind of slide. This was less than what I anticipated. I thought we would get closer to 70, 80 million, or possibly even up to 100 domestically. Now, globally, the number's better, but it's definitely better than what the performance has been for Supergirl. The problem is that you're going to end up with a full slate of competition over the next couple of weeks as we get closer to Odyssey, and then, of course, as we get to Spider-Man Brand New Day. And all of these things kind of pile onto each other in a way that maybe makes this, a little bit concerning, at least for Universal. Maybe Minions are wearing thin. I'm not sure. Maybe you guys would agree or disagree. Well, it looks like Minions and Monsters are headed toward a lower than expected $64.5 million. Now, this is right in the ballpark. This is definitely a low coming out after the Despicable Me 4, which opened to $122 million 2 years ago. And that was an excellent performance, if you ask me, at least as a way to start. This is starting to seem like a trend, though, when it comes to all films. There are a lot of films that just aren't getting the kind of love or attention that you would anticipate, which doesn't bode well for something like the Odyssey, which I think is going to perform very poorly indeed, despite the fact that it'll be on 70 to 80 PLF screens globally. I think that the global opening will be seen by those who want to see the film right away. I think it'll be heavily front-loaded and heavily loaded with IMAX theaters, and I don't know necessarily that that will be a good thing. Now, at the same time, Supergirl box office fell apart. It was projected to be 70% or more of a drop, and it did achieve that. We'll get to the numbers here in just a second. Look, this is from Jordan Rumi over at World of Real to tell us that the July 4th weekend box office was dominated by two animated films. Well, kinda. I mean, Minions and Monsters was definitely going to always be first place. Second place was always going to be Toy Story, and everything else just looked like also-rans, including Supergirl, which came off of a start at 37 million last weekend and is headed for a very steep drop. So after underperformance, it's going to perform even more poorly. In fact, our friends over at Cosmic Book News, Matt McGloin, says Supergirl tested like Batgirl. Then DC chose the gun cut. And again, competition between the two cuts is what is reported to have maybe made some difference here. But I don't know if that's necessarily true. I think that either cut was going to perform poorly, whether or not you had 11 extra minutes and more creme or not, because that's what the Gillespie cut was, is 11 extra minutes of not being entertained. The Hollywood Reporter's behind-the-scenes bombshell is definitely the source of all this material for Matt McGloin, and DC knew this movie wasn't working long before it hit theaters, and the fingerprints on the final cut belonged to James Gunn. Well, I've been reporting that forever. Everybody's been reporting that forever, including our folks over at That Park Place. But this tested along the same range as Shazam Fury of the Gods, which failed, and of course, Batgirl, which is, I'm going to tell you, Shazam was not great, and Batgirl was going to be a disaster. And yet, they went forward and burned one for the tax write-off and released the other to, well, maybe kill off the Gunniverse sooner rather than later. Hard to say. But the studio took the movie over. At least that would be James Gunn. He is the studio. And after the December test screening came back just okay, they had to move forward on their own. And it followed essentially the James Gunn playbook and did it in a poor way, bringing in a new writer, Jeremy Slater, a Gunn favorite, to help write scenes for a 9-day reshoot that they certainly needed. Remember when Gunn said he didn't need to really reshoot much? Well, he certainly did here. He also had to get a new writer, which also tells you that this Anna Nogueira is certainly not the right person to write Wonder Woman or Teen Titans. The fact that they're still keeping her around in the conversation is embarrassing. They need to saddle her with this failure and maybe Gillespie, but instead, well, they're just going to aim for Gillespie. And I don't know if that's the right person to point at. I think that because it's Gunn and Gunn's editor, Fred Raskin, that led to this disaster, I think that is firmly where fingers should be pointed. But none of that matters at all because the entire weekend was rather muted. In fact, let's take a look at that right now. The numbers tell the truth. Minions and Monsters at 36.4 million in 2,243 theaters with a theater average of 85.79. A total performance of 61 million over its 5-day weekend, and then Toy Story 5 in second place at 31. It fell off about 56% from its last weekend, and in 17 days in all, this thing is approaching $400 million domestically. That's not a surprise, though. I would say we were kind of all expecting that. Young Washington was a surprise, though, coming in third place at $20.8 million. We Are So Back. And that was only in 2,700 theaters. So it earned nearly as much per theater average as the other top two films and on fewer screens. So $20.847 million would have been much higher than I would have anticipated. Now, Supergirl, on the other hand, fell down 74% to $9.6 million. This thing was set up for failure from the very beginning. It has not gone over 60 million domestic, and it's really not bringing in the crowds. It has 3,602 screens. The question is it going to keep them? The answer to that is probably no, because they're going to want to clear things out to make space for other films in the future. I mean, Universal has another release coming out. Warner Brothers has other things they want to get more publicity. Disclosure Day is not doing anything in the theaters at number 5. You only got $6 million on a holiday weekend. Overall, these numbers are very low for what equates to a 5-day weekend here in the States. And it doesn't get better as you scroll down. Obsession stayed at the top 10 at number 6 with 5.3 million, Backrooms at 3.3 million, and I believe that's the new extended edition. Mind you, they're not losing a lot of theaters. These are still probably the same theaters where it's been doing well week in and week out, with Obsession having a bigger fall than it's had in a long time. Jackass Best and Last at 2.7 million in its 10th day of release, and only 14.6 million overall. Do you think that earns some money? Hard to guess. I don't think so, but pretty soon it will. And Scary Movie at $1.1 million, falling another 63% in only 1,158 theaters. Look, at $976 per screen average, that's very low. Now, The Invite in limited release, again, let's talk about the 10 days it's been out, is per screen average of $28,597 because, well, there's only a few places you can see it. And it jumped up to over $800,000 just this weekend alone. And you looking at a $1.369 million performance from a film that probably didn't cost all that much. And I'm going to just say it this way. Maybe this is Olivia Wilde or similar kind of directors like opportunity to micro release these films and maybe create some macro interest from the elite folks out there. Maybe that's going to be the same audience that Maggie Gyllenhaal is going to pursue, because it certainly isn't a mainstream one. Star Wars: The Mandalorian and Grogu stay in 11th place at 600,000, dropping another 66%, and it only $176.8 million in 45 days of release. May be the most disappointing Star Wars ever in theatrical history. We can go through the rest of this, but it's a lot of also-rans that are now currently on digital, including Michael, Leviticus, Maddie's Secret, Devil Wears Prada 2, The Death of Robin Hood, Rose of Nevada, Peter Asher, I Love Boosters, which is a complete disaster at theaters, Mary Oliver, Sherman's March, and Underland, which I didn't know anything about. What I will tell you is right now they're only reporting the top 22 films, not maybe the other ones that'll show up later as the numbers become finalized closer to Monday afternoon. And the bigger disappointment is that the box office just barely scored over that $100 million mark that I'm always touting about. And that's not good. $119 million for 22 films in cinemas. That's really, really low. The theaters really need in the summertime, especially big tentpole weekends, about $200 million, or at least close to that ballpark. This makes up for the 3 months of January, February, and March, exactly what I said last weekend. And right now, nothing is in pursuit of that. How disappointing could it get? Well, we could have a really rough several weeks in front of us until we get to Spider-Man Brand New Day, because I think Odyssey is set to disappoint. Not that it won't make money, especially its first weekend, but I think that they are going to make a lot less money than they anticipated with the award-winning director Chris Nolan and, of course, his stunt casting, which I think is going to teach Hollywood a valuable lesson. But hey, I could be wrong. Let me know what you think down in the comments section below. Are you going to go see any of these films? Have you seen them already? And if so, what did you think? Are you looking forward to the Odyssey and Spider-Man Brand New Day, or are you just going to stick with what you've seen so far and maybe wait to the end of the year to catch any other big tentpoles? I mean, Moana's coming out. Isn't that going to drive the box office? I don't think so. What do you think? Again, let me know in the comments section below. As always, be sure to take care of yourself, take care of others, and until next time, see ya. Just hopefully at better movies than we've been getting recently.